All right, so the agenda for the week. I'm going to be gone for a few days. Friday, what you missed was the test answers. It was an important day because this was for number 1, the test you already took, because you could get 50% back. So those of you who were concerned about your score on those tests, and I do understand it used to be that you would have a multiple choice test, A, B, and C, and all you would have to do is pick one of those options. You didn't ever have to type in an answer. And the problem is that you're going to have to learn how to type in an answer correctly with no spaces and not missing any numbers, and don't forget any signs, because a computer's not going to tell you a question is right when it's not right. So you need to get used to typing them in correctly. I gave you all the answers, and all you need to do is make sure that they're on paper, and you'll get 50% back for putting your answers online. Today, on the other hand, we've got some notes. I'm going to talk about the questions that are going to be on the test, the new stuff. There's going to be questions from the last test, and then there's new questions from assignments 17 to 19. That's where you find the greatest common factor, as well as number 20. So that's what we're talking about today. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, you're going to be taking your test. Okay. So let's go ahead and start on your notes for today. The essential question is, what new questions are on tomorrow's test? And there's 2 types of questions that are going to be on there. There's questions about the GCF, which come from number 17 to 19. And there's questions about factoring a trinomial. And that is assignment number 20. Those are the new assignments, the things that we've been covering between the 2 tests, the greatest common factor and factoring trinomials. You'll also have a little bit of your Bell work. So maybe over to the side, one other thing. Any assignment that you've ever done on Bell work, there will be questions from there. So for example, what do I mean by GCF? Well, the GCF is when somebody gives you, for example, a binomial, and then you're responsible to put it into a box and to find what those 2 things have in common. In this case, they have a 5 in common, and they also have the letter X in common. And you put that out on the outside. That's called the GCF. And you figure out what's left on the top. You're responsible to draw that box. When we did the second of those 2 pages, a lot of people struggled because they didn't draw the box. So when you make your binomial, you need to draw the box yourself. And then the other thing we talked about was factoring trinomials, and we did that with a tic-tac. If you have, for example, x squared plus 7x plus 10, the tic-tac to solve, or the puzzle that you're solving, is numbers that multiply to 10 and add to 7, and the numbers that do that are 5 and 2, which means that this is factored as x plus 5 times x plus 2. So the 2 new concepts on the test is how to factor out a greatest common factor and how to factor a trinomial using a tic-tac. For this first page, I'm going to talk about a greatest common factor. For example, what if I wanted to factor a trinomial like 15 x to the second y plus 20 x y to the second? It's not going to draw the box for you. You're going to have to draw it yourself. In a factoring problem, you know what's inside the box. You know the inside. And you're trying to figure out what's on the outside. Distribute is when you know the outside and you multiply it to find the inside. So this one, we know what's inside. And there's going to be 2 kinds of a term. There's room for 1 here and 1, 2 here. So in order to get this, I need a monomial times a binomial. And here's how to get it. On the outside, I put the greatest common factor. In other words, I take away all of the terms that they have in common, all of the current terms that they share. These 2 terms share. This 15 is 3 times 5, and this 20 is 4 times 5. And what they share, it's not the 3, it's not the 4, it's the 5. They both have a 5, so I can factor out a 5. And then they both also have a letter in common. They have, this is an x and another x, but this is just a single x. And so that means if I wanted to start taking things away, I could only take one x away from both of them. And the same thing here. This has two y's, but this only has one, so I can only take a single y away. So the greatest common factor is 5xy. And now I figure out what's left on the top. What times 5 makes 15? 3 times 5 makes 15. And then x times, in order to get x squared, I need x times x. X times x is x squared. In order to get the y, I've already got the y, I don't need any more y's. And so the answer here is 3x times 5xy, that gives me 15x squared y. What would be here? 5 times 4 makes 20. X, I've already got from the side. Y times y makes y squared. Y times y is y squared. And let's put a plus in between those two. So that means that my final factored or split up version, you do have to put the final answer, 5xy times 3x plus 4y. Okay, so this, let me pause there for a second so that you can write those down. These are the factors. So if somebody asks you, what is a factor? You would say, a factor is 5xy. This is what's divisible. In other words, the inside of the box is what you were dividing or splitting up. So this binomial was divisible by these factors. So if you were to say this is the factor, 15x squared y plus 20xy squared, if you were to say that's a factor, you would be wrong. The factors are this one and this one. They're what you split it up into. So these are the factors, and this is divisible or split upable. All right, let's try one more. So what if I were to want to factor 144x to the third? Actually, let me go ahead. I'm going to do the one that's exactly on Khan Academy, because there was a wording here that I bet a lot of people are going to get frustrated with. So it says, the rectangle below has an area of 12y squared plus 21y to the fifth meters. Now remember, the area is what you get when you multiply, and that's why they put it in the middle. The area is what you put in the square. The width of the rectangle is equal to the greatest common monomial factor of 12y squared and 21y squared. The width is equal to the greatest common. So this out here, they're trying to tell you this width is the greatest common factor. This is the greatest common factor. Well, that's exactly what we've been saying. We've been saying that this is the greatest common factor, and they're just telling you that that's otherwise known as the width. The width of the rectangle is equal to the greatest common monomial factor. That's the GCF of 12y squared and 21y to the fifth, of this and this. What are the length and the width? Okay, they're just asking you what goes on the side and what goes on the top. The width is what goes on the side, and the length is what goes on the top. So let's draw this box and we can figure out the side and the top. So they drew the box for us. It was 12y squared and 21y to the fifth. 21y to the fifth. And they said that it's the greatest common monomial factor out here. And then figure out what's left on the top. That's going to be the length. The greatest common factor, let's see, 12 is 3 times 4. 21 is 3 times 7. And so they share a 3 in common. How many y's do they have in common? Well, they have 2 y's in common, because as soon as I divide 2 y's out of there, I'm all out, and I can't take any more. So now what's left? 3 times what makes 12? 3 times 4 makes 12. And I've already got my y squared, so I don't need any more y squares. If I put another one here, it would make that 3. I don't want it to be any more. I've already got the 2 that I need. All right, so the next one, what goes here? 7 goes here. 3 times 7 is 21. How many more y's do I need? Well, I need 3 more y's, because 2 plus 3 is 5. And so the length is 4 plus 7y to the third, and the width is 3y to the second. Okay, that's another way of saying the thing on the side and the thing on the top. The thing on the side and the thing on the top. The thing on the side was 3y to the seconds, and the thing on the top was 4 plus 7y to the third. Okay, so that was the first of these two pages. In this page, we were discussing how to do these problems, how to put the GCF on the outside and figure out what's left. All right, and now on the other side of the paper, we're going to factor some trinomials. And we already took some notes on this, but it really there's still some things that I think need to sink in on people about how to do these. So just remind ourselves how to answer these. First, make a tic-tac puzzle. Here's what a tic-tac-toe puzzle is. You're looking for the numbers that multiply to make the top of the tic-tac and add. All right, so when I am factoring a trinomial, I do it with what I call a tic-tac puzzle. What you're looking for are two numbers that multiply to make the top of the tic-tac, and they also have to add to make the bottom of the tic-tac. So the hardest part is making the tic-tac. So we've got x squared plus, let me make one up here. Let's do 8x plus 15. So the tic-tac for that problem would be two numbers have to multiply to 15 and add to make 8s. Now I know you don't want to write all the factors of 15 over here, but I want you to. 15 is 1 times 15 and 3 times 5, and that's all of them. Which one of those two ways of multiplying to 15 also adds to make 8? Well, this one does. So the solution to this tic-tac is 3 and 5. 3 times 5 is 15, 3 plus 5 is 8. So I can write my binomials as x plus 3 times x plus 5. And then if I check to see if that works, I multiply x and plus 3 times x and plus 5, x squared, 3x, 5x. Add those together, you get 8x. That's the reason why you add to the middle. 3 times 5 is 15. That's 15, and that's the reason why you multiply to the last term. All right, let's try one more. X squared, I'll use a negative this time, minus 2x minus 35. Let's set up our tic-tac here. So I'm multiplying to make negative 35 and adding to make negative 2. Nobody wants to write all the factors of 35, but you have to. You write the number 35, and then you write all the ways that you can think of to multiply to make 35. 1 times 35 makes 35. 5 times 7 makes 35, and that's all. Now, let's think about some other information that this has. I know that that multiplies to make a negative, and I know that one negative makes a negative. So that means that one of these answers has to be negative and the other has to be positive. So which one has to be negative? Well, let's see. 5 times 7 is 35, and I want the answer to be negative, so that means the bigger of the two numbers has to be the negative. 7 times 5 is 35, and negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. And so that's the solution to this tic-tac. X minus 7 times x plus 5. All right, and then that was a summary again of how to factor a trinomial. I set up a tic-tac. In other words, I turn it into a puzzle. Two numbers that multiply to give you the last term and add to make the middle term. And if you'd like, I think your page should have enough room to do one more example of these. Maybe two more. So let's do x squared minus 7x plus 6 and x squared, how about minus 3x minus 63. Would you pause here for a second? Try to do them on your own, and then I'll give you the solution in a second. Okay, so you should have just unpaused. I want two numbers that multiply to make 6 and add to make negative 7. That seems impossible because they add to a bigger number, but it's possible. And then two numbers that multiply to make negative 63. That's kind of messy. two numbers that add to make negative 63 and multiply to make negative 63 and add to make negative 3. So this one I know, because the answer here is negative, that means that one of these has to be negative and only one. This one, because this is negative and that's positive, I know that I have to have two negatives. Two negatives when you multiply make a positive, but when you add they stay negative. 6 times 1 is one way of factoring. Let's see, 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 plus 1 is 7, and so this one looks like it's that solution to the tic-tac. X minus 6 times x minus 1. And then the next one, two numbers that multiply to 63, well, there's 6 and 9 multiplied to make, or 7 and 9 make 63. So, whoops, if it's 7 and 9, then I messed this up. This should have been a 2. All right, so the only possibility here is negative 9 and positive 7. So that's x minus 9 times x plus 7. And this was how to do assignments. This is assignment number 20. And you'll need it for the test when you are factoring trinomials. Please, at this point, you're going to need scratch paper. I did take the whiteboard's markers, erasers, and put them away. You're going to need your own scratch paper. I would like you to complete wherever you're on. Assignment number 20 or assignments number 17, 18, and 19. Or you can try working ahead, but that won't affect your grade on the test because the test will only cover this material. So if I were you, I would go back and practice whichever of these you thought was the hardest. So please take out a piece of scratch paper, open your computers, and do either Chapter 8, number 20, or Chapter 8, 17, 18, and 19.